Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started now. I thank everybody for being on here. If I can, there we go. So I want to thank everybody for being on here. My name's Scott Geltner. I'm the chairman of the Veterans Committee, and we are the committee that oversees the USS Stark Memorial Report, the General William C. Westmoreland nominations, and also we are doing, which we'll talk about later, is the State Service to Veterans Award. So those are the three things that we primarily deal with as far as it comes to awards. Again, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. The way I have this set up, we are recording this session. We're doing another session tomorrow night. It'll be the exact same thing. And I will record both of them. And depending on the outcome of the two videos, one or both of them may be posted on the Veterans Committee webpage at some point in the future. And we will also use these videos to improve the training. The next time we do this, we'll try to come up with frequently asked questions, things like that. Right now, we're looking at 37 participants. Tell you what, originally, I wasn't quite sure how many people we're going to have on here. So originally, I was going to have all the questions asked at the end of the training, but I think I'll take a chance here with 38 participants, and we'll go ahead, and if you got a question during the presentation, go ahead and ask it, and we'll try to address it then. You can also, if you want to, submit any questions you have via chat, and those will be answered at the end of the training, because I probably won't pick up on every chat that's sent out while I'm doing this training. Okay, so first of all, we probably got a wide range of knowledge of the Stark Report. So I'm just going to assume or take this at a very basic level. The USS Stark Memorial Award, it originally started in 1988. It was heavily revised in 2022. At that time, we made some major revisions to the report where we kind of made it more uniform on how the points were being totaled for the different various activities, and allowing more credit for mileage driven and time spent. The purpose of the report, one of the primary purposes, is to recognize outstanding chapters and outstanding state societies for their support of veterans, and also for their support of the activities of the Veterans Committee. Now, I do want to point out, because a lot of people tend to only look at this as being some award that their chapter can get. And, I think a lot of chapters probably feel they don't have a chance to win an award, so they don't bother to submit a report. The Stark Memorial Report is more than just about winning an award or getting recognition. The Veterans Committee uses the information that we collect in these reports to determine and see which activities most chapters are participating in, which activities we're not seeing a lot of activity in, things like that. As a way of an example, several years ago, we recognized that we didn't have a whole lot of representation in the VA medical centers. It was very low percentage of the chapters had anybody representing the SAR at the medical center. So we made an effort to boost those numbers up. And although we don't have the numbers quite as high as we would like, we have made great strides in increasing the numbers of SAR representatives at VA medical centers. And that is important in my mind anyway, because those of you who may be on VA medical center assignments, that is a great way to network with like-minded organizations. And you will find that by having representatives at VA medical centers, you will be interacting with other organizations, and you'll just kind of spread out and find a whole lot of other opportunities for your SAR chapters to participate in, both in the community and for veterans. Okay, just some basic information. The reporting year for the Stark Report is from January 1st to December 31st of every year. There is a tracker spreadsheet, which is primarily for your convenience and your record keeping. The points can be tabulated during the year in the tracker, and that's one of the real benefits of using the tracker. It's an Excel spreadsheet, and as you're doing these events through the year, you can record this so that at the end of the year, when it comes time to fill out the actual score sheet itself, it's a much easier process. And we'll get to that as we go into the presentation. We'll get into using the tracker and how you can use it for your final report. It's highly recommended from the chapters that you get your score sheets into your state chairman's committee by January 15th, so he has time to compile all those reports and get them finalized into the state report. But that's really up to the individual states on when he wants those in. I just suggest January 15th. He may want them in earlier. He may be really quick and he doesn't need them in that soon. It's up to your state, but that's what I recommend. When you submit your Stark reports, you can either send them directly to me on email, and there's my email address there, or you can send them to the executive director, and there's his email address there, and they must be in by February 1st. And I'm kind of lenient on there. As long as it's February 1st or before, I'll be okay with it. So if you email it, as long as it's sent before 11:59 p.m. on February 1st, you're good. And if you mail them in, some people still mail them in, as long as it's postmarked no later than February 1st, that'll be fine as well. But by far the best way to do it is to email them in. There are 11 sections in the Stark report, and I'm going to go through them real briefly here. These are just paraphrased titles for each one of them, because if I put the full title up there, it'd take up too much space. So the first section has to do with chapter members who are appointed to VA voluntary services or their Center for Development and Civic Engagement committees. The second section is for hours served at VA hospital voluntary services. The third section deals with SAR members visiting veterans or taking veterans out on an outing. Section 4 is for gifts donated to veterans. And this is primarily personal care items, personal hygiene items, food items, things like that. Section 5 is each dollar or monetary donations made to the VA or state veteran hospitals, etc. Section 6 is for publications donated to veterans. Primarily, this is going to be books, magazines, CDs, DVDs, things like that. Section 7 is participation in the SAR Wounded Warriors program. Section 8 is activities recognizing or supporting veterans when you're working with other organizations, not the SAR. Section 9 is decorating veteran graves and attendance at funerals. Section 10 is new or used men's and women's clothing donations. And Section 11 is new or used working items such as TVs, computers, etc. It's kind of a wide open thing on what can go into this section here. Okay, so just real briefly, this is not an all-inclusive list of things that can be reported, just to give you some ideas. We already talked about the VA representatives and the volunteer hours. Visiting a veteran, taking a veteran on an outing, some of the personal care donation items, money, things like that. I'm just skipping down here. Decorating veterans' graves with a flag or a wreath, buying a wreath from Wreaths Across America, attending or participating in veterans' funerals, and again, the donations are used, new and used clothing and furniture, appliances, electronics, etc. Okay, so in the course of this, we'll be talking about there are two different files you could be dealing with, depending on how you're doing it. I highly recommend that you use the tracker. We've commonly referred to it as the Stark tracker or the Stark activities tracker. It is an Excel spreadsheet. And the reason I recommend this, as I said before, you can use this throughout the year. It makes totaling up your points at the end of the year so much easier. You can also incorporate a lot more detail into this tracker. So for those of you who have chapter members who are working towards or close to getting the Service to Veterans Medal. This makes it much easier to track their points and activities and help you tally up their points to see if they've earned it yet or not. Most of the information in the tracker is for your personal information, just so you have a good record of what your chapter did. When it comes, and that again, that's an Excel spreadsheet. The actual report itself is a PDF form, and it doesn't contain, those of you who've done this before, you know it does not contain much detailed information. It's basically just a bunch of numbers with totals being added up. Whenever, for this year, when you use the Stark PDF form, the form number should be USS Stark 2022-A. That is the last, 2022 is the last year it was revised. We did not change any of it for 2023. So make sure this is the form you're using. Last year, I got a chapter that submitted a report that was the form was from 2016. I do not know how they were able to scrounge up a report form from 2016, but they managed to do it. Okay, so the tracker, this is just kind of like the home page. It gives you all the totals, so you can see how, you know, your chapter's doing as far as totals and where you're getting your points. This is the front page for the scoring sheet itself. And if you have not read this, I strongly suggest that you do read all these paragraphs at the front, because it does contain information that helps you fill out the form and know what's reportable and how you should do it. I get several questions each year from people that they could have answered themselves simply by reading the information here that's in the first part of the PDF file itself. So just how some of the points are done or the awards are given out. For the chapters, we have the chapters broken up into 4 different size groups, as you see there. And within those size groups, the ranking of the chapters are based on points per chapter member. So it's kind of interesting. What we find is that generally the smaller chapters outscore the larger chapters for the most part, both in total points and in points per chapter member. It's the same for the state societies. When it comes to the Stark Award, we just have 2 groups as far as state size based on membership. We have under 1,000, and then 1,000 and more members for the state societies. And they also are based, the ranking of the state societies is also based on points per society member. Okay, I just want to talk a little bit about the, I'm just going to try to fix something here real quick. Okay, there we go. Okay, the State Service Veterans Award. This is a relatively new award. The first time it was in use was in 2021. I don't know if everyone is aware of this, but hopefully you were. This award is for state societies only. Chapters are not eligible for this award. To qualify for this award, a state society must meet the following criteria. First, the state has to submit a USS Stark Memorial score sheet. And then for state societies who have chapters in them, at least 50% of the chapters in that state society also have to submit a Stark report with at least 50 points on each one of those chapter reports. If there are societies who do not have any chapters, for those societies, obviously they cannot submit a chapter report. So all that state society has to do is submit their society score sheet with a minimum of 50 points. This is not a competition. Any state society who meets this requirement gets a certificate, an award. So it's not just like one society or 2 societies are going to get this. Everybody who meets this criteria will get a certificate, recognize them for this award. And also all the Stark score sheets that will be applied to this award, they have to obviously meet the deadline, which is February 1st. Okay,
So
just
that, I got a question.
sure.
So is it something, was that something where the state the state has a person who will just aggregate all the chapter reports?
Okay, in this situation, to submit a state society report, somebody in the state society needs to be the collection point for all those reports.
Right.
Typically, that is the state veterans chairman.
Okay.
Now, not every state has a state veterans chairman. At least we don't have a name for everybody. I
Mhm.
think it's I think 39, somewhere around 39, 40 state societies do have a state chairman. If you don't know who your state chairman is, email me and I'll let you know who he is. But generally, that's going to be the person that's going to collect all the state or chapter reports, compile them into the state report, and submit the state report.
Got it.
Chapters can submit your reports directly to me or the executive director. You do not have to go through your state chairman.
Thank you.
But you need to copy your state veterans chairman when you submit your reports to me or the executive director, so they know it and they got a copy.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, so just to give you some idea of what you have to do to get 50 points for a chapter, 5 hours of volunteer services, or attend 5 funerals, or have 1 funeral with 5 chapter members attending. 5 hours attending a veterans event, $50 spent on donations of clothing, books, magazines, or personal care items, or sponsoring 3 Wreaths Across America wreaths. Any one of those will give you 50 points. So it's real easy to accumulate 50 points. Any chapter who's trying should not have any trouble getting that. And also, you know, in just about all the sections, you also get points for miles driven. So again, nobody should have trouble getting 50 points if they want to do this. Okay, now here's some important things that probably definition wise to understand. For the purposes of the Stark report, and this is also the Veterans Recognition Committee, they use this definition as well of a veteran. A veteran is a person who has honorably served or is currently serving in any branch of the United States Armed Services or the armed services of an allied country. So active duty personnel are considered veterans. If you do anything to support or provide services to an active duty service member, that is reportable in the Stark report. As far as armed services of an allied country, I'm going to assume for the most part, you would probably be dealing with people who have retired or are no longer active duty in an allied country. But, you know, primarily, you know, if you got a question on who's an allied country, just let me know, but I think it should be pretty obvious on who would be considered an allied country. Okay, now in the Stark report, it does say that supporting documentation is required, or you should submit it. It's not really necessary to provide supporting documentation when you submit the score sheet. However, I strongly suggest you have it available in case there is a question to validate any of your entered information. There are usually a couple of chapters each year that kind of have eye-opening numbers on the report, and I will contact them and ask for verification of what they have reported just to make sure they got it right. I'm not necessarily accusing them of doing something underhanded. I just want to, you know, sometimes people can put in an extra 0 or something like that, and I just want to make sure that the number I'm seeing is what they intended to submit. Also in the in the tracker, you will see references made to business attire. Business attire does, it was difficult for us to come up with a term that was easy to understand and not being too long. So business attire for the purpose of the Stark report means whatever dress is appropriate for the situation. It does not mean a suit and tie or a black tie and coat or anything like that. It's just basically what's appropriate for that situation. So if you're doing a formal presentation, we would expect that you would be dressed up a little bit better than if you're taking a veteran on an outing to a baseball game. We don't expect you to be wearing a suit and a tie going to a baseball game. but wearing something nice would be good. Okay, veteran service organizations. This one can be a little bit tricky for some people. So the definition of a veteran service organization is a VA recognized service organization whose primary clients are veterans. Now, here's where it gets a little bit tricky, is there's the website in blue that you can go to for the VA, and they will list all the recognized veteran service organizations for the VA. There are a lot of organizations, more than you would think. If you actually go to that list, you'd be surprised at some of the groups that are listed as veteran service organizations. Okay, David Hill, you have a plaque ceremony. What plaque ceremony are you talking about?
Placing plaques or doing the plaque ceremony for the Revolutionary War graves?
No, that's not reportable in this because it's reportable in Americanism.
Gotcha.
Okay, so 2 conditions to be recognized as a VSO for the Stark Award. We just said it has to be listed by the VA, and the organization's primary clients are veterans. Now, the reason for that is if you go to the VA's list of veteran service organizations, you will see the American Red Cross, Goodwill, Salvation Army, and some others. They are not primarily focused on veterans. They do work for veterans, but say you make a donation to Goodwill or you take clothing to Goodwill, there is no way you can track and ensure that your donation is going to go to a veteran. So therefore, any activity or donations to these organizations cannot be reported on the Stark. Organizations that you do meet this criteria, the VFW, Disabled Veterans, American Legion, Vietnam Veterans, etc. If you have a question on whether an organization qualifies or not, just send me an email and I will let you, I'll let you know on whether it qualifies or not.
How about USO?
Yes, USO would.
Thanks.
Okay, activities with veteran service organizations. Anytime you see the phrase on the Stark report, other organizations whose clients are primary veterans, they apply to that section. And you'll see it regularly on these in this report. Okay, so donations to veteran service organizations or anything else on the Stark report, the donation of time, money, or any items must be made as a representative of the SAR. So when you do a donation or you're doing voluntary work, whatever organization you're doing this for or giving it to, they must know or recognize this is coming from the SAR or that you are a member of the SAR. That's because this report is for recognition of SAR members. You could be a member of another organization. If you want to do donations to that organization, that's fine, but they're the organization that should be recognizing your work in this area because they're the ones basically getting the credit. Any donations of time, money, or items must not benefit the donor in any way or will provide something he will use. An example I would give here is, say you have a chapter member who's a member of the VFW and they want to buy a new pool table. So your chapter member donates money for buying a new pool table for his post. Well, in a roundabout way, that could be benefiting him because he has use of that pool table. So that would not be reportable. That makes sense. That one can be a little bit tricky for people. And then the last one is, which is standard for any donation of or any donated items, is the donor cannot receive any goods or services in exchange for the donation.
So, okay, I got a scenario for you. So my son's active Air Force. I pay for his cell phone. Would that be eligible or no?
Okay, I knew that was going to come up. Here is the criteria. You answer this yourself. Are you doing it because he is your son? Or are you doing it because he's a veteran?
Well, kind of both, but
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I get it.
Here's the scenario I always tell people. Say you have a brother-in-law that's a veteran and you go fishing with him. Are you taking him fishing because he's your brother-in-law, or are you taking him fishing because he's a veteran? If you're doing it because he's a veteran, then you can report it. If you're doing it because he is your brother-in-law, then you can't report it.
Yeah, that leaves a lot of room
Yeah.
for
Well, I'm
a lot of wiggle room there.
is that well, we're a society of gentlemen, and so I
Yeah,
leave that up to
exactly.
you.
Yeah, because that was another question I had, I guess, was we have a member who's a World War II vet. My wife was laughing at me in the background. We have a member who's a World War II vet, and their sons come. One of the sons, they have several sons. He has several sons, and they come and pick him up and they drive him to the SAR meeting because he's not able to drive.
Mhm.
So, you know, they're obviously driving him because he's their father, and they're doing it because he wants to come to the SAR meeting. So by that shouldn't be reportable, right?
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so when you're transferring information from the tractor to the score sheet, sections 1 through 6 require the compatriots information in additional to the numerical value or data. So when we get to the sheets, I'll explain that a little bit more. Section 2, and this one kind of catches people off guard, is that section 2 on the tracker has 2 sections or 2 subsections. One is for the VA hours, which are reported by the VA in their service report. I don't know how many of you guys are volunteers at a VA, but whenever you provide volunteer services there, they record your hours, and at the end of the year, they come up with a report. So in the first section, those numbers are what go into the first section. The second section is for hours that the VA doesn't report for some reason. Each VA is different. They're not all the same. So if you have somebody do an Operation Ancestor search at your local VA or state veterans hospital, they may or may not be reporting those hours. If they are not, you report them in the second section of section 2. Also, if you have chapter members who are participating in burial details through the VA, some VAs will report that with their volunteer service report, and others will not. So you need to know if they're doing it or not, and if they're not, then you need to make sure you're reporting those hours as well. Okay, now here's something that is of tremendous help to me. When you're filling out your score sheet at the end of the year, make sure all the information is filled out at the bottom of page 1. And down here is where I did a little screen grab with all that information. It's very important that you get the chapter membership listed down here. This is a number of members in your chapter as of January 1st of the contest year. I would hope that most chapters know what that number is, because when your state goes through the reconciliation, they should be able to tell you how many members you have in your chapter who have renewed their dues. But that number is important because, as I said, all the rankings are determined by points per chapter member, and I get weird stuff in that box. I don't think people understand it. It's a member number. A lot of times it's left blank, and other times I'll get like dates in there instead of numbers. So make sure you get those numbers in there as well. That really helps me out. Okay, here's something else a lot of people aren't aware of. The Patriotic Outreach Awards are all being reported through the Stark Report. In previous years, you could go online and report your Partners in Patriotism or Participation Reads America or Honor Flights directly on the SAR website through the Patriotic Outreach Committee. Now they are all being collected from the Stark report. So for the Partners in Patriotism Award, those activities are reported in Section 8 of the USS Stark report. And I'll talk about that when we get to Section 8 a little bit more. Wreaths Across America are reported in Section 9A, which has to do with the decoration of veteran graves. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to that section. Honor flights are a little tricky because it depends on what the specific activity or support being provided is. If you have a chapter member that is acting as a guardian on an honor flight where they are escorting a veteran throughout the day, that would be reported as a veteran outing, and that would be reported in Section 3. If you are, I know a lot of chapters will have color guards when the honor flight returns at the end of the day. If you're doing that sort of thing, then that would be reported in Section 8, where you are supporting or recognizing veterans with other organizations. So again, primarily escorts or guardians, Section 3, just about anything else with honor flights is going to be Section 8. Okay, so now we're going to go through each section in a little bit more detail. Section 1 is VA representative appointments, and this only applies to VA medical centers. It does not apply to any state veterans hospitals or anything like that, primarily because the SAR does not have jurisdiction over state or any authority over state veterans hospitals. We are recognized nationally by the VA as a volunteer organization, and all the appointments as a representative or deputy representative have to come through the Veterans Committee chairman, which is currently me. So if anybody wants to be a representative or deputy representative, you should contact me and we'll get that process rolling. Typically, I will get the letter of appointment written and submitted within about 24 to 48 hours. But if you have somebody that has not received written approval from the Veterans Committee chairman, whether it was me or one of my predecessors, then they really are not a VA or SAR representative to the VA. Just to let you know, if you are, or anybody that is an SAR representative, must attend the VA meetings, and they are quarterly. And the VA typically, if you miss 3 or 4 meetings, nobody from the organization shows up, that organization will be dropped as a recognized volunteer organization at that specific VA medical center. And if you do have representatives at the VA, they are basically the conduit through which the VA can ask for your chapter members to support them with volunteer time hours, money, or in-kind donations. And any of this is reportable through other sections in the Stark report. In Section 1, it's just the appointments. Okay, first couple of slides here, I'm going to have, hopefully it's not confusing. In the top, I just have the section from the tracker. And at the bottom here, this is the section in the actual Stark score sheet itself. So for a VA representative, fill in the date. You just put in January 1st or whatever date they were appointed for that year. If they were appointed the previous year, just put January 1st, the name of the volunteer, where they are appointed, and their role in the organization. And that's primarily, are they the representative or the deputy representatives, what we're looking for there. In each one of the sections on this tracker, there's a little box at the top up here, which will add up all the points for you. Those are directly transferable down to the Stark sheet down here at the bottom. Can you see my cursor? I should have asked earlier. Okay, so this is formatted, so all you gotta do is take the number here, put it down there, and then the total points should agree. So I'm just having it for these first couple of sections, just so you can see why we have the tracker and how much easier it would be for you to use. In the actual report, if you want to fill in the names here, you can, or you can just submit the tracker sheet itself. Either way is satisfactory. Okay, for volunteer hours at the VA, This one, different chapters like to do it different ways. You can enter every time your chapter member donates or goes and volunteers at the VA. You can report every day they volunteer, but you don't have to. And I'll show you that here in a second. The hours you report are working hours only. Travel hours do not count unless you are a driver for the VA. If you're driving, whether it's transporting veterans around or doing some other driving activity for the VA, if you're doing that, then you can report the time, but otherwise it's only while you're actually engaging or performing a role for the VA. On any one of these sections, you will see hours and mileage. It's one or the other. You can't report driving time and mileage. The easiest thing to do, hopefully your VA is doing a volunteer service report where they're tracking the hours for each one of your chapter members, and that's a much easier way to do it. It's not necessary to enter individual hours for each day. You can do a single entry for each chapter member, just providing the total or his personal total for the year is acceptable as well. So again, here in the tracker, you can do every day they volunteer if you want, but what I suggest doing, it's perfectly acceptable. Again, just put in January 1st here if you want. Doesn't matter what the date is in this instance, the person's name, where they are volunteering, the name of the medical center, the hours. So this could be the total hours they volunteered, which you would get off the report you get from the VA, and then the miles they drove. And that's the miles they drove to and from where they're volunteering. So they will probably have to keep track of that. If they're doing the same route every time, they're not doing side trips or anything, they probably know how many miles to and from, and then from the volunteer services report, you will be able to see how many days they volunteered. And so it should be a pretty easy calculation. But again, it's up to you on how you want to do it. And again, I'm just showing the example here. You got total hours, total miles, and they're just directly transferable into these two boxes here to make reporting a little bit easier. Now, there is section 2B. And this is for volunteer hours that are approved by the SAR, but for some reason the local VA doesn't report them or count them as volunteer services hours. This is primarily considering Operation Ancestor Search. This is one of those activities that kind of falls through the cracks a little bit at some VA medical centers. If you do this, because of COVID and a lot of issues we've had getting back on site at a lot of medical centers, you can report Operation Ancestor Search activities that are performed at a state veterans hospital or state veterans nursing home, things like that. To get to section 2B on the tracker, you have to go through 400 rows of section 2A. And the reason there are that many rows is that I've had chapters that have asked for that many rows because they want some of their chapter members to be able to report every day they volunteer at the VA. And again, these are for hours that are not included in the VA service report, which you would be entering in section 2A. And travel hours do not count. Okay, so here's section 2B, non-VA hospital, including Operation Ancestor Search. And another reason we did this is because with the reformatting of the report, it came harder to track Operation Ancestor Search activities. So we wanted to have a way of being able to identify Operation Ancestor Search activities. Okay, visitation and outings. So this is where you report any of your chapter members who visit a veteran in a hospital, nursing home, or the veteran's own home. So if you got a veteran living at home and you go visit him, that counts. If you take a veteran out for an outing, any type of outing, anything, you getting him out of where he is, whether it's a house, a nursing home, or whatever, that is an outing. If you just take him for a drive out in the country, that is an outing. Taking him to baseball games, to say you take them to a Memorial Day event or a Veterans Day event or Independence Day parade. All those are outings. And these hours are not recorded in section 2. So for this, you do need to make an entry for each occurrence, enter the date, name of the veterans, location, hours, and the miles driven. And again, this is a question that came up earlier. The visit or outing must be due to the veteran service, not a personal relationship. So that, again, the example I gave of your brother-in-law taking him fishing, I'll leave it up to your discretion, but you need to answer the question, are you taking them out because of a personal relationship, or are you taking them out because they're a veteran?
Scott, are
Yes.
you taking questions now? Or you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead and ask.
This is a section I need more lines on.
Okay,
I've got a couple of guys that do weekly outings with guys.
okay.
So that's 52 line. That needs 100, and 102. Well, it's every week. It's 104 lines, and there's only 100 lines on the report.
If any section of the tracker you need more lines, send it to me and tell me how many lines you want, and I'll put it in. And typically, as long as you don't send it at midnight, I'll probably get it back to you within a few hours. Definitely, I'll get it back to you within 24 hours in almost every instance.
Okay, I'll send you a request.
All right, Jim, you got a question?
Yeah, I do. I take a church member who's a veteran to his doctor appointments. Is that reportable?
Well, it goes back to the question: are you taking him because he is a veteran or because he's a church member?
Well, I know him because he's a church member, but I was asked with other people to do transportation.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave that up to you to answer. But if you're taking other people to if you're taking other people to hospital or medical appointments, I'd probably say not. But again, we're working on the honor system, guys, here. I can't police every little report or every item you guys are submitting. Last year we had over 200 Stark reports. And so, some of you guys are really active out there. So we're working on the honor system here. So just as a note, again, I just want to reinforce this is not limited to VA or other veteran facilities. It applies to wherever the veteran lives. So he doesn't have to be homebound. He could be able to drive himself. But again, if you go and pick him up and say, I'm taking you to whatever event because you're a veteran, then that's reportable. And here's that section in the tracker. Again, date, the compatriot who did it, name of the veteran, location or the event, hours and miles driven. Now, if you got an event where you're doing a whole bunch of veterans, again, as far as name of the veteran, that's really for your records primarily. Say you do an event, say you got a chapter member or you got a bunch of chapter members and you get a bus and you pick up a whole bunch of veterans. You can report every name if you want, but if it's too tedious, you don't have to report every veteran's name. You just do the miles and hours driven. And if it is something like a bus, the miles driven is, the hours and the miles driven is irrelevant to the number of veterans. So if it's an outing through a vehicle, if you got one chapter member that picks up one veteran and you got another chapter member that picks up another veteran, that would be 2 lines in this report. But if you got one chapter member that picks up 5 veterans, that's 1 line. So say one chapter member takes 5 veterans out for a 1-hour drive. That's 1 hour and however many miles he drove. But if you got 5 individual chapter members who individually take 1 veteran out for a 1-hour drive, then that's going to be 5 hours. Okay, personal care gifts. Now, this one has a lot of potential here, and it's really hard to list everything. So basically, any physical gift that isn't a publication, isn't clothing, and isn't an appliance or fixture, something like that, is reportable here. We're talking primarily small items, personal care items, deodorant, razors, lotion, playing cards, games, puzzles, non-perishable food items. That was something that was really missing in the previous report. So if you take snacks, whether it's potato chips, cookies, any food item. Yeah, Jim? Did you raise your hand or you just forget to take it down? Oh, okay. So any of those items donated to the VA, State Veterans Hospital, or nursing homes, or any organization whose primary clients are veterans, those are reportable. So just make an entry for each donation, the dollar value, because everything's based on dollar value now. If you are donating free samples, because there are a lot of people who travel a lot and they'll pick up the shampoo, soap, and whatever they get in hotels, those would be free samples. Those are reportable as well, but at a reduced value. The items you can report here are soap, shampoo, toothpaste, toothbrushes, shaving cream, combs, playing cards, puzzles, non-perishable food items, etc. If you, again, this is pretty wide open. If you got a question on whether it goes into this section or another one, just email me and I'll let you know. But pretty much any sort of small, inexpensive item you're given for the use of a veteran would go in here as well. Again, no clothing. All clothing is reported in section 10. So again, here's where you report it. If it's something you bought new, you put in the purchase price here minus taxes. You cannot include taxes in anything you buy and anywhere in the report. If it's free samples you got at a hotel or through some other sort of means, you just put the number of samples and they are at a fifth of a point per item. And then the miles driven, and the miles driven is going to be the miles you drove to donate them. So if you got to drive 10 miles to the State Veterans Hospital one way, that'd be 20 miles, you know, there and back, you could report 20 miles. Okay, monetary donations. Again, this could be to VA, state veteran hospitals, veteran nursing homes, or any other organization whose primary clients are veterans. For this, you need to make an entry for each donation. Again, entering in the name, description, dollars, miles driven. Monetary donations can be in different forms. They can be cash, check, gift cards, or travel vouchers. The travel vouchers, some VAs and some organizations that deal with veterans that have mass transit systems in their cities, they will have travel vouchers that you can buy and give to veterans so they don't have to pay to ride a bus. And I know in a lot of cities, the veterans are given those vouchers so they can get to medical appointments, things like that. But any travel voucher like that would be reportable. Okay, yeah, in section 4, let me just go back to section 4. If it's a new item, it's the purchase price. So if you're getting something for free, it won't have a purchase price. Now, if you're donating both purchased items and free samples, you can make that one line if you want. Or you can make them 2 separate lines. Either way will work. Okay. Okay, so here's the spreadsheet for the monetary donations. And again, it should be fairly straightforward. Again, as far as the description, that's primarily for your purposes. Just put in what they did. But the key thing is who it's given to, the amount, and then of course the miles driven, so you can get credit for those. Okay, publication donations. This can be a little bit of a tricky one depending on where you are at. But again, it goes to VA centers, state veterans hospitals, nursing homes, or any organization that has primary clients or veterans. Make an entry for each donation that's made. Donations can be books, magazines, DVDs, CDs, audiobooks, anything that would be considered a form of media. Taxes paid are not included in the dollar value that you will be reporting. Check whatever organization or facility you are going to donate these to, check with them in advance that they will accept it. Some of these facilities will only accept new books and current magazines. They will not accept used ones. Here at my local VA, during the pandemic, they only accepted new books, and here last week I got confirmation they are now accepting used books again. But I know there are some VA medical centers that are not accepting used books or magazines either, so you have to check. And
Yes.
Is there a question?
Yeah, Scott, this is Steve Conrad. Did I read somewhere last year where you didn't get any points if you donated a magazine that was older than 6 months? I thought it had to be newer than 6 months.
Okay, that is primarily the policy of most VAs.
Okay.
Now, I don't necessarily agree with that because I go to doctors' offices and I'm more than happy to read a year-old magazine.
Yeah.
And other things too, like National Geographics, the Smithsonian, magazines like that don't age.
Right.
So I would say as long as your facility accepts them, I would go ahead and report it. That's
Okay.
the main thing is you're benefiting veterans.
Yep.
But I know at my local VA medical center here, they will not take a magazine that's older than 6 months.
Okay. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
And guys, just make sure, just out of common courtesy, that any books or magazines you donate, that they're not dirty, musty, or smoke smelling. I collect a lot of books, and I get some that look like they were stored in the corner of a wet basement. I end up just throwing them away. And just for your GWiz file, I don't think any VA will accept any book or magazine that would be considered advocating any religion whatsoever. So just be aware of that. The state, a veterans nursing home or state veterans hospital might, but I do not know of a VA medical center that will accept that, because that whole, promoting religion thing that they're wanting to avoid. So-
Does this AR have any publications that can be sent to a state veterans hospital,
If you
like
want,
our monthly magazine?
yeah, you could send that or send those.
Okay.
I mean, you could do the color guardsmen as well, but I don't know how many, unless they're SAR member, I don't think they'd really be interested in that.
Yeah, no, but the SAR mag has articles
Yeah,
on, some of the historical events.
yeah, I could see a veteran getting value out of that, so, yeah.
Hey, Scott, on your religious comment, I have been successful donating stuff directly to the chaplain,
Okay,
just not to the general services, but to the chaplain.
yeah, see, I always make my donations directly to voluntary services.
But they take them and give them to the chaplain. I mean, I don't have to make 2 deliveries.
Okay, well,
But
if you could do that, that's fine, but again, you're gonna have to check with your particular facility.
Right. Right.
I've delivered to 4 different VAs in my time in the SAR, and none of them would take religious material.
Okay. But that's just how I got it done. So,
Yeah, that's a good workaround.
okay.
Okay, so again, pretty straightforward. Date, who donated them, who's receiving them, whether they're new or used, if it's new purchase price, if they're used, just the number of items. You get 1 point for used items. And of course, the miles driven. Okay, the SAR Wounded Warrior certificates. And I'll tell you right up front, this is one of the least reported activities in the Stark report. Year after year, this is the fewest, very few chapters are reporting any activity in this area. Really like to get more chapters involved in this program because it's really good. I've done it personally myself for many years, and it's really rewarding to give this out to wounded warriors. So in case you don't know, the SAR has this challenge coin, which is pictured here. It's specifically for wounded warriors, and we have a wounded warrior certificate. You can get this. You can buy them for $16.50 currently from the SAR merchandise. You can have the name of the veteran you're presenting it to, or wounded warrior presenting it to on the certificate, and then present it to them in some sort of presentation that you arrange. So whenever you report this, make an entry for each presentation, the date, the name of who the wounded warrior you're giving it to, the location, the number of sets you purchased, and the miles traveled. Now it's important, these presentations do not count as visits under Section 3. Again, there's no double dipping in anywhere in the Stark report. If you report it in one section, you can't report it in another section. So again, this is something we'd like to see a little bit more activity in. Another misconception I'd just like to clear up here, because a lot of people think that the recipient has to have a Purple Heart to get a Wounded Warrior Challenge Coin certificate. They do not. The only requirement to get the Wounded Warrior Challenge Coin is that they are injured in the line of duty. So while they are on duty, whatever branch of service they are on, it could be a car accident or, anything like that. That qualifies them for the Wounded Warrior Certificate and Challenge Coin. I don't know if any of you guys have researched this, but to get a Purple Heart, it actually has to be, the injury has to occur in combat. So particularly like right now with some of the things we're dealing with, there's a high probability of our servicemen overseas getting injured in a non-combat situation while they are on duty. And so we just want to make sure that they're all covered. But I strongly encourage you guys to take this up. Some people look at that $60 or $16.50 per set and think, oh my gosh, that's so expensive. But that is a very small amount of money compared to your typical SAR medal. So strongly encourage you to give these out if you can. All veterans were injured in line. Well, if you say so. So here's where you report it. The date, the recipient's name, the wounded warrior's name, the location where you gave it to them at, number purchased, because if you're giving out to a whole bunch of them, again, you can print out each individual recipient's name. If you're getting out a whole bunch, you can just say various names or however you want to fill that out. Business attire, that would be whatever you feel is appropriate. It doesn't necessarily have a suit. It could be a nice polo and khakis or a golf shirt and khakis, something like that. If you go dressed in your colonial attire, then you report those hours here. You get more points in all sections of the Stark report. You will get more points if you participate in colonial attire than you do in business attire. And then again, miles driven. And so that's per compatriot. So if you got 5 compatriots riding in the same car and they drive 50 miles to go present Wounded Warrior Coin, one person can, the driver of that vehicle can report and collect the 50 points. If you have 5 members driving their own cars 50 miles, then each one of those guys gets 50 points. But only the driver or the person whose car you're using can get credit for the points. Does everyone understand that? If you're carpooling, only one person gets the points. Okay, activities with veterans organizations. Okay, so any of the VSOs we talked about earlier, they would qualify for this. DAR does not. The event must be historic or patriotic in nature. And when I say patriotic, that covers a wide spectrum of activities. We're not necessarily talking about Independence Day celebrations, Veterans Day, anything like that. Again, you guys, I'm going to leave you up to the honor system here of patriotic event. If you got a question you want to ask me, I'll be happy to answer it for you. Again, the typical information, the date, the compatriots' names, and what they're wearing and number of hours and all that. Now, here's an important thing to remember. I kind of talked about earlier. Any valid entry in this section automatically qualifies you for the Partners in Patriotism Award. Okay, so those of you who have submitted and received the Partners in Patriotism Award in the past, this is where you need to put it now. So I work with the Patriotic Outreach Committee and I share this information with them. So when I'm processing all the reports at the end of the year, I pass this information on to the Patriotic Outreach Committee and they take care of their certificates. So anything that's a valid report in this section, you're automatically getting the Partners in Patriotism Award. Is this award only for SAR members? Which award were you talking about? Were you talking about the Wounded Warrior? I'll go ahead and answer it. If the award you were referring to was the Wounded Warrior, that is for any service member who was wounded in the line of duty. He does not have to be an SAR member. This activity here that has to be with an SAR member, your chapter members with a VSO. Okay, so here's where you fill out that information here. Again, it should be self-evident. As far as compatriots' names, this is primarily for your information. I would suggest you actually put their names down in here individually so you can track their points for them earning the Service to Veterans Medal. But if you want to, you can just put various, however you want to do it. It's primarily for your benefit. The number of compatriots. If you're doing individual compatriots, so say you put Joe Smith here, Bob Jones here, then obviously the number of compatriots in any one of these columns is only going to be one. Okay, decorating graves and attendance at funerals. This is a highly active area within the SAR for the chapters. This is one of the sections where we get the most some of the most points reported. So decorating veterans' graves and decorations can be flags, wreaths, etc., placed on veterans' graves and removing the decorations. It's important. You get credit for putting them on and you get credit for taking them off. If you take them off, you don't have to be the person that put them on. You can do both or either one. You get credit for whatever you do there. So make an entry for each occurrence, enter the date, compatriots' names. The veteran's name is optional because I know Veterans Day is coming up. And if you go out and put flags on a couple of hundred graves of veterans, it's going to be very difficult for you to record every veteran's name. So, you know, if you're doing small numbers and you want to do the veteran's name, that's fine. Otherwise, just put various or something like that. In most of these columns, you will have to have something entered. Otherwise, it won't total up your points. If it's not totaling up your points, it's because you probably left something blank in a column. So location, the dollars or amount of money you spent in purchasing the flags or reason or whatever. Now, my chapter, we reuse our flags. So for Veterans Day, we will put flags out. And then at the end, after Veterans Day, we will go and collect those flags. So the first time we use those flags, we can report what we spent on those flags. But after that first year for those flags, we cannot report the dollar amount because we're not spending money for flags. All we can report is the time and miles driven. Again, business attire is going to vary depending on the specific activity. Again, I'm not expecting anybody to wear a suit and tie to go put a flag or a wreath out on graves. If you are doing wreaths for Wreaths Across America, somewhere in that column, identify Wreaths Across America, put WAA or Wreaths Across America, something in there. You can put that in place of the veteran if you like, but it needs to be in there somewhere. Section 8, Veterans Day parades and ceremonies. If you are doing this on a veteran's grave, yes. But just being in a Veterans Day parade, no. You have to actually be decorating a grave. Yes, for Wreaths Across America, if you are sponsoring a wreath and that's all you do, you don't know the name of the veteran that's going to go to, but you should know the cemetery. So you still get credit just for sponsoring it, but you don't have to put the veteran's name again, just put various or unknown, something on there. So here's what that section looks like. The date of the decoration, the compatriot that did it, the name of the veteran is optional. I can't remember in this instance if you have to have something in there or not, but if you leave this blank and the total points don't add up, just go put unknown or various in here, or Wreaths Across America, and then it should total up the points for you. The location would be the cemetery where you're doing it. Purchase price is only if you bought that item new. If you're reusing it, then you cannot put the purchase price after the first time you use it, and then the hours you spent doing it and the miles driven. So if you have two compatriots out there and they're putting flags out on graves and they are both out there for an hour, then each compatriot could claim 1 hour. And if they drove separately, they can both claim their mileage, but if they drove together, only one of them can report the miles.
Excuse me, under section 9, where it talks about attendance at funerals, what about, like, for example, the Camden 14?
Well, I'll get to that next.
Okay,
Has anybody got this? Okay. The Camden 14, that is a tricky one because that wasn't a grave marking. I wasn't able to make it. That wasn't a grave marking, correct?
it was a funeral.
Yeah, that would count. Now, a Patriot grave marking is not reportable in the Stark because it is reportable in the Americanism. So it's that whole double dipping thing again. The Camden, as I recall, the way that was is that would not be reportable as a grave marking in the Americanism, so you could report it here.
Okay, thank you.
And they would fall under killed in the line of duty. So participation in a veteran's funeral, and this is important to recognize, you can only count one of the following per deceased. Because most veterans, if you go to a contemporary, a contemporary funeral now or service, there will be a visitation, there will be a funeral service, and there could be a separate burial. You can only report one of them. You can go to all three, but you can only report one of them. So if you go to the visitation, the funeral service, pick which one you want to report, and that's the one you report. When you make your entry, again, it's the usual information: date, person's name, and identify whether they were killed in the line of duty or not. Again, this is not necessarily combat. There are various roles that you can report that if you have a chapter member performing any of these roles, they can pick this or pick one of these. So a reader, dedication or bugler, rifle team salute, they participate in the gun salute, if they participate in a flag folding, if they are a pallbearer or honorary pallbearer, they get those points. And then if they do any of these, they can also get this. But you don't have to be one of these to report this as well. Now, one thing when we read this report, which we didn't expect people to be doing, but they have been doing, is being a flag bearer. If they are a flag bearer, I would say just put them down as being a reader, a dedication, or a bugler. Because we didn't, at the time we redid the report, we didn't have anybody reporting activity as being in a color guard. But I have had people come up and say, well, we had compatriots that were in a color guard at a funeral. So that's where that would go. Now, the note here for veterans killed in the line of duty, it's double points in all these, the miles, everything. Now, I want to point out one thing here. This is the only section in the Stark report where you do not have to be a representative of the SAR. Because I know there are a lot of VFW members or other veteran organizations that when they go to the funeral of another veteran, they're going to be dressed up in their respective uniform. And I don't think we should say, well, you can't report this because you weren't representing the SAR. This, this is a veterans and funeral. I think it's very important for any member to be there. So as long as they are a member attending, an SAR member attending, it's reportable. They do not have to be representing the SAR, in a uniform or any form of insignia. But this is the only section with that exemption. Okay, so this is the busiest section we probably have. Again, we have a lot of guys who are SAR members who are on funeral details. And so I know some of these, depending on what cemetery they're at a funeral detail for, they could probably be doing 8 to a dozen funerals a day. And for them to get all the veterans' names would probably be a little bit difficult for them. So if this is a funeral detail situation, just put multiple in there. Don't worry about the veterans' names. However, if some were killed in the line of duty and some weren't, then you probably need to split those out. The role in the funeral, just put the letter here, up there, put it in here. Number of funerals, again, that's primarily going to apply to those who are members of a funeral detail. The tire business or colonial, attendance hours, and miles driven. Now, for those in funeral details, the attendance hours is while they are actually part of a funeral detail. I know some funeral details, they will go out there and maybe it's not, they don't have back-to-back funerals, so they may be sitting out there for an hour or two, then they'll do a funeral, then they'll have a gap of another few hours, and then they'll do another funeral. That time that's reported here, the attendance hours, is the hours they are actually on duty performing as a funeral detail, not the time they're spent out at the cemetery. Yes, well, okay, I want to point out this isn't necessarily killed in action. Killed in action does count, but killed in the line of duty counts as well. So like the example I gave earlier is if someone is driving while on duty and they're in a car accident and get killed, that is not considered killed in action. That would be killed in the line of duty. So yes, KIAs are reported here and get double points, but also killed in the line of duty is reported here and given double points. So basically, if you just put the Y or N in this column, it'll automatically give you the double points. So all you gotta do is put yes or the Y or N here for yes or no. Yeah, if you want more rows, just let me know. Just send me your spreadsheet and I'll put in as many rows as you want me to put in. Again, this is one of those things you kind of got to play around with because over a period of time, you may find out that some sections just inherently don't have enough rows and we can grow them. But, didn't want to put in 200 rows and people only use 50 of them or 10 of them, something like that. So again, any section you need more rows, just send me your file and I'll be more than happy. You just tell me how many rows you want put in. Okay, section 10, clothing donations. You can donate new or used men's or women's clothing. And in some places, you can also do children's clothing because they are collecting some VAs and veteran service organizations will collect clothing for children of veterans, and those would count as well. Okay, new clothing is based on the price paid, and to qualify as new clothing, the donation must be made within 30 days of the purchase of the clothing. Used clothing value is 1/3 of the original purchase price. Now, you may not remember exactly how much you paid for something. Again, we're working on the honor system here. I'm not going to get my knickers in a knot if you donate a pair of blue jeans and you put down $35 and they only cost $30. Again, the whole purpose here is to benefit veterans. So as long as you are calculating on the price with the best intentions, I will be happy with that. But again, if you're donating $30 jeans and you're putting them down as $100 original purchase price, that would not be good. Okay, if it is for the same veteran, that would be one event. But if it's for different veterans, then it would be separate events.
And likewise, if it's for the same organization, that'd be one event, correct?
What do you mean by organization?
For clothing donations. So if we did a VA,
Oh.
we did stuff for the VA, we donated to like slippers and robes and things like that for inpatient stays.
Mhm.
That would be one event, correct?
Well, how you report it is up to you. You are getting credit on in this section on miles and dollar value,
Right.
not by numbers of events.
Okay.
I'll show you here on when we go to the next page. As we said before, donations to Goodwill and the Salvation Army are not reportable because you cannot prove or guarantee they're going to go to a veteran. Again, taxes paid are not included. And then, you know, the information here, which we already talked about. So here's where you put in the information. I suggest every time you make a donation, you put it down here. Now, you may be in a situation where you have 5 members to your chapter say, here's what I collected, and one person takes it down. So what I would suggest is if you have 5 compatriots that give donations to another compatriot, then I would put down each of those 5 compatriots, their names, what they donated, who's receiving it, and whether, you know, put in the dollar value here on whether it's new or used clothing. If they're not delivering it, they have 0 miles. The compatriot they give it to, he can report the miles. Now, if he's not personally donating anything, then his clothing columns here would remain blank. But if he is also donating clothing, then he would fill in these blanks and get the miles. Okay, yeah. Okay, equipment, appliance donations. This one is a little bit of an open-ended one as well. Any new or used but working items such as TVs, computers, appliances, etc. Again, to any VA, state veterans hospitals, veterans nursing homes, or other organizations would qualify. Again, this is open-ended. We had a member of my chapter a couple of years ago who donated a treadmill. There was a veterans facility that requested a treadmill, and he had one he wasn't using, so he donated it. So again, you know, this is kind of a wide open thing. If a veterans organization asks for it and you have it, it's good to go. So again, just check with the recipient to see what items they will accept, because not all of them will accept the same things. New items, again, must be donated within 30 days of purchase. Used but working items, again, make sure they're working, will receive points equal to 1/3 of the original purchase price. Receipts are required for all donations. You do not have to submit them with the Restart report, but just have them handy in case there's a question on it, that you can demonstrate that you did actually make that donation. And so here's example here. It should be pretty straightforward by this time on how you fill it out. This is section A for the new items. And then section B, this would be for the used items, where you put the original purchase price, and it will automatically calculate out a third of that price for you. So any questions on this? One thing I probably should have mentioned earlier is read this information up here, because I each year I get several questions that the person could have answered themselves if they read what's up here. Okay, here are some useful links for you. Again, these presentations at some point in the very near future will be put up on the veterans webpage or made accessible to you. So if you want to copy down these web addresses, you can, or just if you got your phone with you, you could probably just take a picture of it real quick and have them handy. So the SAR Veterans Committee, where you can get the score sheet, the activities tracker, and information on the Service to Veterans Medal, there is the web link right there. Again, when you download or fill out the score sheet for the Stark Memorial Report, make sure it is form USS Stark 2022A. That is, the form number will be at the very bottom of the last page on the right-hand side. If you're interested in purchasing Wounded Warrior coins and certificates, this is the link that will take you to the SAR store where you can purchase those. Information on Operation Ancestor Search. This is the web link to the web page for Operation Ancestor Search Committee. And then for Patriotic Outreach Committee, here is their web link for that committee as well. So be a lot of good information on these web pages. If you have not visited any of these web pages, I suggest you do. You'll probably learn about some of the activities and opportunities we have to support and serve our veterans that you were not made aware of. Okay, so are there any questions? This is about spot on of what I expected. I figured it'd take about 90 minutes. So
I have a question, David Peters.
Yeah.
I am going to 2 memorial events. Arlington Cemetery, decorating the graves of 2 different people who were killed in terrorist events in 1985 and 1988. Do those count as, I mean, they were killed in action, but the funeral was back then. I'm decorating their graves. Does that count as a killed in action grave event?
okay. Let's go back to that. Okay, so you're just decorating the graves.
Yes.
So there are no extra points just for decorating the graves.
Okay, got it.
The extra points are only for participating in the veterans funeral.
Got it, Roger. Thank you.
Question from Ski Rombowski.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. First of all, I was late. What time was it supposed to start? I thought it was 7:30.
7:30 Eastern time.
Eastern. Okay, I'll get on tomorrow. But I have a question on tab 8, activities. I spend about 6 hours each month as a volunteer at the Bush Airport USO. Is that considered as an activity on tab 8?
Tab 8, yes. You would report that here.
So USO is part of, okay, I can use that. Cool.
And that automatically requires you for Partners in Patriotism.
Okay.
But if you missed the very beginning, you do have to be recognized as a member of the SAR. And that's a question that nobody asked, which I probably should have brought up myself. But the definition of being recognized as an SAR member means either the people know you are a member of the SAR. So if you're a regular volunteer and they know you're coming from the SAR, like if you're a VA medical center and you are a registered volunteer from the SAR, then that obviously you're an SAR member. If you wear a shirt with an SAR insignia, a hat with an SAR insignia, that qualifies as being recognized as an SAR member. Or if you just in talking with people say, hey, I'm here from the SAR and I want to help, just as long as people can identify or some way recognize you're with the SAR, that's what counts.
Thank you.
Okay, getting back to this chat. Is there a plan to use just the tracker? Yes, there is. That is my ultimate goal. But before we can get there, we want to make sure all the bugs are out of the tracker. One issue we have had in the past is that some SAR members who were using Mac computers, you can set up a Mac computer so it will operate Excel spreadsheets. In the past, this spreadsheet would not work on Mac computers, but we think we have it fixed so it will work on Mac computers. This is the first year right now where we're testing to make sure it works on Mac computers. Those of you who are on Windows 11, the previous iterations of this score sheet, if you try to use them on a Windows 11 computer, you will get a message saying that there are dangerous macros involved or something about the macros. It will not like the macros for the Excel spreadsheet. So in this current version, which you can download now, the macros have been removed. And from what I've been told, those people using Windows 11 are not getting that macros warning message. So basically, once we're comfortable that there's no issue with Mac computers and there are no issues with Windows 11, we will be transitioning to this tracker as being the actual report, similar to what the Americanism Committee does.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Hey, it's
Yeah.
Bill in June, Louisiana. We donated $900 to the American Legion, who was they bought signs on the interstate for the Vietnam veterans. So there are 2 exits that are Vietnam Veterans Memorial on Interstate 20 at Minden. And would that count for an individual who donated?
It came straight, they know it came from the SAR, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that would
And
count.
then if they have that person drive up there and give a briefing, if you will, does the mileage count?
Where's he going to give the briefing?
It was at Minden, so it was a 2.5 hour drive. And
Yeah, what's he giving a briefing on is what my question.
well, why he donated. And
Yeah, that would count.
okay. I was just curious. And Avenue of Flags, we have where we have 1,200 flags that we put up for Veterans Day. They're casket flags, veteran casket flags. Does that count for just one patriotic event, or each flag? I don't think that would count, right? Because we're not decorating.
It's not each flag, it's time. So,
okay. So just the time.
Yes. So are you doing it with other veterans organizations?
Some of them they volunteer, but it's primarily us and the SAR. But these are veteran casket flags is what we put up that are donated by the families. Okay.
Yeah, but you know, in the old reports, it used to be number of flags, but now it's time. It's time and miles, and almost every section, and doing stuff like that, it's going to be time and miles driven.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
John, I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm on a Mac and I did something and I don't know what I did, but where the totalization of that line is, just says reference, pound ref. And I cleared out everything on that line, but it still is there as like, pound ref. Could I send that to you? Would that help if you got that spreadsheet to see what I might have done?
Yeah, I already know what you did.
Oh, you do? Okay.
That's another thing I should have mentioned.
Okay.
When you are using this spreadsheet, do not cut and paste.
Okay.
Copy and paste. Copy and paste is safe.
Okay.
But what happened is when you cut and paste, you destroyed some of the links in the cells that you cannot see where calculations are going on. That's why you get that #ref exclamation point.
Okay.
So if you send me that spreadsheet, I can get in there and I can fix it for you and get it back to you real quick.
No, I just started all over again, so I'm good.
Yeah, it's real quick and easy for me to fix, just, if it ever happens again. But it's the same thing in the Americanism report. Do not cut and paste in the Americanism report. If you do, basically you're screwed and you got to send it in so they can fix it for you.
Is your email address, maybe on the first part of this talk, I'll get tomorrow, or?
Yeah, let me send, it's right up front.
Okay, thank you.
Hope I'm not making you guys sick. Right there, stgelt@earthlink.net.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, you're not alone in that. It happens to quite a few people, so don't feel bad.
Where can we download the Excel spreadsheet?
Anytime you want, it's there now.
From where?
From the Veterans Committee webpage, which I'm going to go to right here. Oops. Right here.
Oh, from there, okay.
Or you can just go, if you're very familiar with the SAR website, just log into the SAR website and go to members, and then under forms and manuals, and you'll find it there. But it's probably a little bit easier to go to the Veterans Committee webpage, go down to the very bottom. That's where all our reports and forms are.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, as I said earlier, where can we get our hands on the slideshow? I'm doing this exact same thing tomorrow evening, and once it'll be recorded as well. And so once tomorrow is done, I'll kind of determine which recording will be the most useful to people, and then we'll make it available on the Veterans Committee webpage. And again, after this presentation tomorrow, because there may be questions people ask that I may want to adjust some of these slides to. And so after the meeting tomorrow, I will have this slide presentation put on the Veterans Committee webpage as well, where you can access it. So I would probably say Thursday or Friday, probably Thursday afternoon, anytime on Friday, this slide presentation should be available on the Veterans Committee webpage.
Thank you very much for your effort in doing this.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping to see a lot more reports. We thought this would be very helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. It's very helpful.
Yeah. And again, if you guys come up with any questions that you didn't think of, just shoot me an email. I usually respond very quickly. I do travel some for work, so as long as I'm not stuck traveling, I usually answer emails very quickly. All right, well, this has been good. We were really right on time. You guys asked really good questions. You were engaged, and I thank you for not only attending this, but also for all your support of our veterans and for taking the time to go through this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.